Hey Dan, thanks for coming on. Pleasure to see you again.
No problems. Pleasure's mine. Yeah, pleasure's mine. Or at least I'm holding to that. I'll tell you that in half an hour if that's true.
Oh, let's hope so. Let's make it interesting at least. Hey, look, I want to dive straight in. Intros are great, but hearing from you is even better. I'd love to hear a bit about the background on you and the companies you're involved with at the moment.
Oh well, I mean that's a long one, right? So most of my time at the moment is on Cube CUB3, right? I mean we joke all the time about the fact that no one can pronounce our company. It's a good job we're a white label marketing engagement platform. Um, but yeah, so cub3.com, new website coming soon. How exciting! Yeah, and that's taken up a lot of my time. I came in initially to do sales and commercial. I've also ended up becoming the CFO, mainly because I'm a qualified accountant that I try never to tell people about. But every now and again, somebody does something and says things like, yeah, well, there aren't actual rules for that. And I'm like, I mean, there are principles and they're pretty harshly followed. So next thing you know, you're running payroll. But it wasn't the intention initially.
Given that you do all of that, what did you want to be when you grow up? When you were younger, and what did you want to be when you were growing
Uh,
up?
Implication there that I'm already grown up, but let's leave that one aside, right, and avoid any kind of Freudian rabbit holes we'll go down. What did I want to be? I suppose when I was, I don't know what, 8 through 12, people were very excited about me mathematically. I didn't know what to do with that, but something mathsy, I suppose. Um, and then later on, I think people were like, "This guy's got what people would refer to now these days, I suppose, as Bants with a Z or lols." Um, and therefore, I kind of leaned towards sales. So I flipped and flopped all around. I did a load of tests. I don't know what they'd be called, but it was a kind of like, you don't know what you to do with your life. Answer these following 25 questions. I strongly agree. I disagree. And it came out as the top 20 were there was two computer programming things, which is pretty funny, right, for the late 90s. But let's stay with that for a moment. There were about 10 jobs that were all some variant form on accountant. There was 6 legally type stuff, and then there was like one of the insurance guys, a kind of quantitative modeling type stuff, stats. And I thought, yeah, all right, I'll do the accounting one. Took my first job to be an accountant, and they said, "Oh, we've got this computer program. It doesn't work. The consultant was too expensive. Do you want to have a go at it?" And I taught myself programming and was a programmer for 2 years, and then got into accounting, and then decided I didn't like it, became a teacher, and then ended up in salesy stuff and I don't know, structuring stuff and product and marketing, and I've bounced around.
So you've gone down that river of kind of doing everything. But what was it? What was the thing you wanted to be? Was there ever a thing you wanted to be?
I mean, outside of footballer, which I could have been, but I could have been a contender, but it's politics, obviously, all very political. Nothing to do with my inability to run fast. What did I want to be? Yeah, I suppose at some stage. Do you know the job I was probably most suited to was consultant on technical things? Know enough about the technical stuff there to help the others out, but not get stuck in a job where you're sitting on one technical deep point for a really long time. Um, I think at the back of the kind of annals of my brain, I think I might like to be that person, but the reality is I can't sit still for long enough. So I'm always saying I'm going to go into semi-retirement soon. Just kind of this time in 12 months, Rodney. But my wife's not having it. She doesn't think I'll ever retire. But maybe that's just she just wants me busy. Who knows? Humble brag there. I've got a wife.
Within all of that. So you've bounced around. You've gone and done different things. Given your previous experiences, what was the driving force into Cube and the transition into startups?
Sure. So some of it was looking on afar, if I'm honest, at some folks that I've got to be careful here, haven't I? Right, and people could check out my LinkedIn. Looking on at some folks and just going, in what world are these guys now millionaires? Like that just doesn't make sense to me, right? And of course, there's a lot of success bias there, right? Because you see those people that are on LinkedIn, someone's talking about them, you're at drinks, they're saying whatever, right? And there is a lot of serendipity, and maybe we'll come on to more of that now. There's a lot of serendipity and providence about um, where you're going to come out in a startup. You can have an amazing startup with a great team, and Amazon burps a product out that's a bit like yours or Microsoft does, and you're done for, right? So there's a lot of luck in all of that, as well as just the team and timing and funding and all those things. So I was looking onto that. I was constantly, and again, I'll be careful here, I've got myself into HR trouble. I was constantly being buffeted at large organizations. And if you look at my career, it's kind of, Barclays, KPMG, Lloyd's, Barclays, KPMG, like it's big organizations, and everybody telling me, Dan, we love you, but maybe you're better suited to smaller places where people can see the value, right? And I was constantly trying to get involved in things to make things happen that weren't in my kind of Weberian area of the business I was allocated, because I was like, but it just needs getting done, and these people aren't doing it, so let me do it. And then people would be like, you're not allowed to do that. So that lack of barriers that working in a business of 12 people absolutely suits me, right? It's like, if you don't do it, it won't get done. At Barclays or at KPMG, if you don't do it, someone else probably will do it. It probably doesn't matter. It's probably internal. Whereas there's nothing internal at Cube beyond a 1 hour meeting every day. So it's really about how many keyboard compressions can your fingers do on a keyboard in a logical way, because things need to get done. And if you don't do it, there's not a team of 12 people underneath you or a shadow team of 6 people off to the side of you. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done. If it doesn't get done, the company doesn't do the things, and that's on you. And that tension, and both opportunity and danger, is danger's the right word, right? Is powerful, right? And it keeps you working at 10 o'clock at night.
Is that something that's innate to you or something you've learned?
I think it was innate to me because I was doing it when I was being told not to. When it was, it's weird to say that it is kind of career endangering, or it's certainly non-positive to your career progression, to do stuff that needs doing that you weren't told to do in these places, right? And obviously they can have values, and that the values they etch up into glass panels on the wall are the same values people have been talking about for 3,000 years. And stewardship, and make it better, and work as a team and work collaboratively and be cross-border. And it says it on all the internal emails, but they don't really mean it because the incentives aren't there to mean it, and you end up clashing. And therefore, when you work at a small place, that just isn't true, because there is only one thing to do, and it's this company needs to deliver a product for people to use, for investors to put money into, for us to generate revenue from, right? Like you could draw the whole business on one piece of paper and everyone know what they need to do. And if you're not going to do that, you're going to get asked to leave, right? This isn't, you can hide away somewhere and be politically sound and covered by someone for a year. So you do tend to find, early on at least, and obviously I've been at Cube since the beginning, turnover does happen, right? Especially at the point we're at now, where, you're well through a Series A, you're moving towards a Series B. It's not about, can we stand POCs up? Does this thing work? Oh my God, people are excited. We've done something no one's ever done before. And it's more about, if I start building a 48-story building on top of what you've got now, are you going to crumble? Because if you are, then change, right? It's got to be lay the foundations. We need to go bigger. And I think maybe there's a little bit here that I might just be looking in my own mirror through my own rose-tinted glasses. Maybe the experience, as much as I buffeted off lots of people at large organizations, that experience of large governance and how things work, I don't want to say in an adult world, that's not quite true, but in a kind of, certainly in that more formal sense, things post Series B, I've got more muscle memory on what they look like. And while I absolutely love the ride from pre-seed all the way through and through A, it has been difficult. I've questioned myself many times. I'm probably more suited to this next part of the journey. Going from 0 to 1 is one journey, and then going from 1 to many is another.
Completely. It's like getting from 0 to 10 is probably the hardest, and then 10 to 100 is even easier, because you've got the foundations laid of how to do it. You talk about those foundations. And when you joined Cube from the start, right? There was none of it. I'm sure there was no foundations at all. What was the vision that drew you in? Was there a narrative? Was it just the product that was being sold? What was it that you sunk your claws into, your intellect sunk itself into, and was like, I want to be a part of that?
Yeah, okay. So, the 3 founders really, but albeit it was 2 that I'd previously worked with, were setting up a new business, bouncing some ideas off, and they were just initially I think, bouncing it off me to see, what does Dan think about this? What do we want to do? And then I kind of quickly became, do you think you could sell this? And in the middle of that, I'd love to say there was this really concise, 40 words, 200 character elevator pitch, and you're like, bang, that's it. But it wasn't like that. It was a bit more kind of, idea soup of some word salad in a vague idea that started to percolate in my head. And so rather than it being oh my God, bang, what, everybody stop, delete all of the work, command Z your way out of everything, this is the future. It was like, okay, that's interesting, percolate, you're switching the shower on at 7 a.m. in the morning, it just comes out cold, and you're like, do you know what? Oh, we could do that with it. Or, you're in the bath on a Sunday. I mean, not everything is wash related with me. You're walking a dog and throwing a ball, and suddenly you're thinking, I don't know where thoughts come from, but synapses just slowly start triggering off. And I'd say over about a week, and I was bouncing this off my kind of partner in our startup support business, right, Charlie, and we kind of talked ourselves fully into the idea. Now, would I say if we all had to go into a separate room of the five first staff in the business, including the founders, we wrote down an elevator pitch, it would have been highly correlated? I honestly don't know. What I can say now is the product we've got is very close to the one I was imagining 2 years ago, right? In the sense of, and we had various ways of phrasing that, but, whether that was with Web3 or not, whether it was, can we gamify followship and brand desire, can we get two-way engagement between brands and users of those things? Look, and we're now seeing more and more of those things. I don't want to say they're all directly competitive to Cube, but Starbucks has got their own one going. There are other people in this space. I wonder if they were 2.5 years ago, but I am a big believer in there are thoughts and ideas that are of their time. And yeah, for sure, the quote unquote inventors or founders or whatever you want to call them grab those ideas and kind of grab them. But Leibniz and oh man, I mean, this is going to need some editing, isn't it? Dan, the guy who says he's computational, has completely forgotten Sir Isaac Newton's name. But Leibniz and Sir Isaac Newton kind of both come up with differentiation, right? Like they come up with calculus at that level at the same time. Like, were they really copying each other's notes? No, obviously not, but they came up with it independently. I'm a little bit team Leibniz on this one, but those things happen. The telephone, I think, was invented at 3 different places in 3 different continents, right? At the same time, the TV, similar. These things have an idea. They're kind of around, right? They're kind of in the ether. I don't want to go too metaphysical on this, right? But they get pulled in. And it felt like we were on one of those vibes. What I would say, though, having that, thinking that, and turning it into an actual product that users use and clients pay money for, it cannot be trivialized. It is, you have got to just will these things into existence. You've got to wrestle with it every day. And they're not for reasons of conceptually this thing doesn't exist. They're for really boring reasons like, no, but we need a bank account that can take a payment in euros. No, because this client's over there. No, because the lawyer said we haven't got, like, they're all boring, mundane things, but you have to hold on to that vision and just will it into existence, or it just won't happen. It doesn't happen because you get clever people who do good stuff in a room. Like, it really doesn't. And I do look back a little bit on that journey and think we could have done that journey for half the, apologies here to the investors, but for half the price in half the time. But maybe that's just always the way, right? It's like the famous, was it head of marketing for Ford, maybe stood on a stage and said, I waste half my marketing budget. I just don't know which half, right? Like, that's the point. Obviously, looking back in retrospect, you can say X post, yeah, we could have done it without this and without that and without that, right? But can you say that ex ante? Because if you can't, it's a parlor comment, right? Like, it's a joke at an evening at a cocktail party. It doesn't exist. So there's a little bit of that I couldn't answer for sure. But now, as you move forward, to your point before, going to 10, I can with pretty strong statistical significance say, these are the clients we want. This is how long it's going to take us with a product. This is how we're going to scale revenue. Much easier than you can in the really foggy early days where you've got a kind of idea salad and you're trying to just force that into something, knowing that, the pulling it down from a platonic form of the sky into the real world, it's dirty, right? And it won't look like that platonic form. It will be pragmatically different because of the realities that you're in, right? And making those things happen, it's ugly, right? And you're going to fall out with people. And like, I've had loads of fights with the founders and early staff, right? Like, we all get on. I'd have a drink with all of them, but it's tough, right? And it's for a certain character, I would say, right? You know, to the point where, like, one of the main founders now is pretty much out of Cube, right? I mean, still obviously it's a friend of the firm and still aware of the firm and still financially incentivized by the firm. However, day to day, they don't do anything on that now, because they were come up with the idea, early electrons, turn that into something. Once it's something, they scale it into something, they sell it to larger professional clients and deal with contracts and, you know, accountants and all that stuff. That's not their vibe, right? So that's brilliant, right? They've delivered a huge value, and I'm sure it's going to make them very rich. But there are different people for different causes. It doesn't make you a bad person or poor if you want to only work in a kind of pre-B upwards, or you want to work on a kind of pre-seed through A.
There's a lot of narrative around people want to do it for the story, right? And they want to be that pre-seed, well, they want to be the guy that comes up with the idea. And I like what you're saying about the fact that the ideas already exist. It's the person that can pull it together and get the electrons to kind of fire off in the right ways, or contain them in a way so that you can understand what it is that's happening at that moment in time. I'm more of a Newton man myself.
Or be willing to trade some of that dream to make it real, right? Better a live product that says hello world that has some known issues than the idea of a perfect product that can't say hello world, can't get someone to use it, right? Like, and that's difficult if it's your baby, right? If it's your idea.
Right, and products are typically successful when they're in the hands of the users. You know what's going on, things are happening, you're getting feedback. Is there a right time to focus on revenue, and when do you focus on that?
So a lot of that, I would say, is macro to the business, right? It's contextual to the business. So, for example, we're having this conversation 5 years ago. I think Cube has raised 5x the amount it's raised, right? And there's a huge marketing campaign, and we're firing loads of stuff out, and we're not too worried about rev. We're much more worried about happy users and product. I think you go now, and it's probably easier to me to talk in generals, right? Because we're kind of right at that point now with Cube. But I think now, in the current climate, the current context, there is a fair bit more about, can this thing turn to revenue, right? Like, I don't, you know, let's be silly and just go, like, look at Uber's valuation and talk to me how it turns profitable. I don't know. It didn't seem obvious to me because the barriers are so low. Not a comment on Uber, and they can come after me if they want. I sense they don't care about me. There's plenty more important people saying that than me. You know, I think the times of give me loads of money, I've read hyperscale, like let's go, first one to the moon wins. It just doesn't work, right? You've got to have much more solid, at the moment at least, right? Maybe those times will come back. Much more solid product unit economics, right? What does that look like? And then, more important to that, because it's earlier than that, is prove that someone will pay $1 for this, right? Like, work out the rest later, right? To my point, if you make someone pay $1 and the product's brilliant, you can maybe make them pay $10,000. But going from I'll use this for free and I'll pay $1 for it, they're two different moves, right? Like, that is a real step change. When are you going to do that? How to do that? I think it has to come much earlier than it used to, right? I mean, I accept that I'm not giving you quantitative answers here, because obviously it differs by each business and what that looks like. And are you D2C, or are you, as in Cube's model, mainly B2B to C? So that says I'm going to convince an agency that my product's amazing, and they're going to take it to their clients, right? Some of that is because we're a brand new technology with a brand new firm going to large corporates. Large corporates are risk adverse, and it's risky to take a brand new thing from a brand new person. If we're going via an agency, clearly that softens some of that. But also, there's more than one price point involved there. Where do we make people get engaged with that? What does that look like? So it's a little bit different. Now, we do have a D2C offering, and at the moment we throw that out for free, and we're going to turn that later in Q1 as we start to show that, in order for our conversations for the next round, or an extension of our prior round, and we're in discussions on both that, maybe more on that later, is, you know, what do we want to say? And this is how you end up a lot in startup world, right? It's not just I go from the left, I keep pedaling as hard as I can, I go to the right. You've almost constantly got to be having a view on right to left. Like, what does that look like? Because you're not following a path of someone else, right? Even if you're going, I've read all the books, I know how Kalnick did it, whatever. It's not their path, right? It's your path. It's really foggy everywhere. So you're having to create your own path. Well, you can just go forward if you want, but there's this mad, I mean, spend some time on YouTube if you want. It's this mad thing where if you blindfold a human being and just say, just walks forwards in a straight line, they don't walk more than a minute before they loop back where they are. And that is because genetically, way back in, or at least we think, it's good for kids, even if they're trying to run away or get away, to come back to where you are, right? You're more likely to find your pack as pack animals to come back. So we're like, oh yeah, I know how to walk in a straight line. Blindfold you, no, you don't. So you've got to be really conscious of, where are my mental pegs? What does that right hand side look like? If I'm trying to line up a seed, even by safes or whatever, what does that look like? What do I want to tell them? What does that PowerPoint? It sounds insane, right? But what does that PowerPoint look like in 6 months' time? Okay, then what are we going to have to work towards? Now, you're allowed to say, oh, it didn't turn out like that, but it turned out like this, right? And you could read all of Mintzberg and their emergent theories. So at the moment, where do you want to be for revenue? I would like to be saying in our next funding round, yeah, we've got this B to B to C going, and you can see the numbers, and you can look into our HubSpot, you can see the numbers flowing, but also we've got a D to C model, and that is insignificant from a revenue point of view, but it's not zero, and that's a big step. And it's growing 20% month on month. Because even if it's going from 1 to 1.2 to 1.44, etc., and clearly that doesn't work with 1, but really small numbers, this is where I get annoyed with people's use of the word exponential. People use exponential like it means big. Like, exponential is the shape of the curve, right? And I'm going to forget who it was, so I won't even guess. Will I guess? No, I won't guess. I want to say it was one of the old American writers of 100 odd years ago. And they were like, how did you go bust? And it's like really slowly at first and then really quickly at the end, right? Like, that's how it happens. That's how exponential happens. It doesn't look like it's doing anything. And then suddenly, boom, it shoots up, obviously, depending on the power of the exponent. But, that's what I'd like to say, is that we are profitable. We are near cash flow positive at a kind of B to B to C pipeline, believe what you will, weighted average, all that. But down at the bottom, we're sowing seeds here that this thing could go bazonkers, right? Technical mathematical term. So therefore, that means I've got to have a product that's easy for D2C to take. I've got to have a product that can take a credit card, because I can't make any of those arguments without that. And maybe getting Stripe on, but we've done it already. But maybe getting Stripe on board is a month's activity. Maybe thinking about a pricing model and what that looks like is another month. Maybe, I mean, these things shouldn't be a month in a startup, right? I'm sounding like I work at Barclays here. But, you could say, I want to raise money in 4 months and I want to have that comment. Well, you can't 24 hours before that say, well, let's write the comment in. You've got to have done the work. So what does that work look like and how will it happen? And they're the things that you kind of need to do. Always conscious of, that kind of right-hand side of the plan. What does it look like? I'm not saying you only work towards the PowerPoint of the kind of the fundraising pack, but in some sense, if you're attracting the right investors, that should be your path anyway. I struggle a little bit, and we have this internal tension regularly about a strategy, because in some sense, we're at the bottom of a mountain and I can see the top of Everest, right? Like, I can see it clear as day, but the whole bottom 2/3 of the mountain's covered in fog. Like, I don't quite know how we get up there and through there. I will know every 3 to 6 months as I get in there, because I can see what are the sales, what are the product, what's the feedback from the clients, where do we need to get to, what's the competitor doing. But I can't map it from here to there, like you could do at Barclays, right? Full strategic review for the next 10 years. You're a major US UK flow bank with a big retail arm in the UK and some African exposure. Like, you can build a 10-year strategy. Much harder though when you're trying to go up from the bottom of Everest to the top of Everest. What does that look like? And that's where I get into arguments internally, because I'm not saying this is definitely the right way, albeit if any of my colleagues are listening, it is to me, it's like, I can tell you where I want to be in 5 years, and I can tell you where I want to be in 6 months. But any clarity between 6 months and 5 years is spurious, right? Like, I just don't know. So that, because you're kind of doubling your business, right? I'm going to more than double the business revenue-wise in the next 6 months. So trying to build it just seems insane, right? So always having a kind of view 3 to 6 months into the fog, for sure. Knowing where we want to be, top right-hand side, Everest, for sure. Being able to map the way from where you are to there, insane, right? Like, the world's too different for that. So I kind of live in that constant world, which probably is the reason why I'm so mental. There we go.
Dan, I want to move into our quickfire round, right?
Do it.
You know, I'm going to say a statement and you give an answer. Are you okay with that?
I mean, I'm nervous, but willing to proceed.
Amazing. What is the biggest piece of startup advice that you hear that is total BS, and why?
Stay true to yourself. It's that kind of like weird, sounds like it's clever, but actually it's insane, right? Like the thing to stay true to it. If you know you've got a product, get it to hello world. And if it's not happening, someone's fingers aren't on a keyboard, get someone's fingers on the keyboard. It's probably you. Look in the mirror and see what is there, not what you want to see, right? Like you're not a unicorn because you've come up with a unicorn idea.
What do you know now that you wish you knew when you started this whole startup journey? Actually, scrap that. Not the startup journey, just the entirety of life.
I think there's an instinct when you're 16 through 18 in exams, and people go, oh yeah, like I'll personify this. I'm not saying it was me, but just to make the story easy. Oh yeah, like, oh, Dan only got a B, but like he didn't do any revision. I bet he could have got an A if he tried, right? The lesson is, no. It's as hard to make people who can't work hard as it is to make dumb people stupid. Dumb people smart. Like some people can't put their fingers on that keyboard and put many hours in. They just can't do it. So trying to go, oh no, but we'll just make the smart people work harder. It's not true. What you need to do is find a small group of people who are smart enough and work hard enough to get you the product, right? It's X times Y. If Y is 0, it doesn't matter how smart they are, they can't do work. Find hard working smart people, not just smart people.
What would you most like to be remembered for in the body of work that you do across your professional career?
I mean, beyond being a stellar podcast guest, I would probably say I'd like to be remembered for being not too abrasive, just because I fear being remembered as being the abrasive person. Everything else, it is what it is, right? I mean, people will say what they say. Like, I don't particularly live for that ego moment, but I think I would dislike if people just remembered me for being abrasive, because I believe I'm fair. It's just, sometimes the mirror's abrasive.
What is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
The pause here implies almost that I haven't got any. I sense the answer is I've got too many and don't know which one to select. Just random facts that mean nothing to anyone and don't seem to have any use other than to break some momentary focus on something important. Like someone just says, oh yeah, I don't know, something giraffes. And I'm like, yeah, they've got no vocal cords, you know that, right? Like they're one of the few mammals who can't make a noise. Like it's an affliction. It's not. It sounds cool now, right? Because you've just met me. This is as good as I get, and I'll never get this good again, right? I mean, can you imagine my wife? She's just like on loop 10 of this thing, right? That's why I had to marry her quick, because my first loop round, I sound pretty cool. Oh, this guy knows stuff. Look at him dropping some ancient Italian in or some Greek nonsense. But actually, it's just a little loop, right? And a series of loops. So yeah, maybe that's why I've never stayed in a job more than 3 or 4 years, right? Because people are like, oh, we thought we were smart. He just knows 7 things and says them on loop.
Dan, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure's mine.